Actor, writer and comedian Stephen Fry often tops the list of people we'd most like to have at a dinner party. So we weren't surprised when we were inundated with questions from viewers who wanted to know about this incredible man. Whether he's talking about LGBT rights, Donald Trump, or even just how he's lost weight, his answers are always thought-provoking and optimistic. Here he is. So let's talk about Mythos then, a trilogy.
Yes.
3 shows about gods, heroes and men.
Mm-hmm.
Firstly, why Greek mythology? And do you think it will help us make sense of the crazy world that we're living in today?
I think what the Greeks understood, which is why I so responded to it as, from the first as a child, is that if you look at the world, it's unfair, it's cruel, it's unjust, there's violence and unpleasantness, but it's also majestic and utterly beautiful and incredibly awe-inspiring. And the Greeks just thought, well, if that's the world, then the gods who made it must be like that too. They must be a mixture. They must be wonderfully majestic and glorious and noble and harmonious, but they're also quarrelsome and violent and unfair and unreasonable, because the world is. And so they created this kind of almost like a mafia family of 6 gods and 6 goddesses who all have these fantastic personalities that are similar to our own. Essentially, that's the point. We are, we love to blame politicians, or we blame, something, but really all of us inside are kind of contradictions. We are savage tribal creatures with appetites and desires and resentments and fears, but we're also generous and kind and loving, and these squabbles within us are like the squabbles on Mount Olympus between the gods.
Yes.
And the stories are just, I think, matchless. I've never come across, there are other wonderful mythic cycles, of course there are, but nothing with quite the juice and charm and wit and glory of Greek myths.
But you have the gift, don't you, of being able to hold an audience and tell a beautiful story.
I hope, yes, I enjoy it so much. It's just, I often say, and it's not false modesty, it really isn't, but when I was at school, I was so hopeless at everything. That was prized at school. I couldn't run in a straight line or catch a ball, or I couldn't even swim till I was about 12. I couldn't draw, I couldn't sing, I couldn't play a musical instrument. But the one thing I discovered I did have a passion for that no one else seemed to, which struck me as odd because everyone can do it, was speech, language, and writing.
Yes.
It's common to us all, a few dysfunctions aside. And yet, to me, it was like music, and storytelling was like architecture and everything, all the arts put together. And so, because I couldn't do anything else, I would write stories and tell stories and tell them to other my fellow school children and whatever, make stuff up. And I sort of won a few prizes for storytelling when I was about 10, and I remember thinking, wow, maybe I can be a writer one day. And it just was the thing I could do, and so I worked on it.
Yeah. Well, the gods certainly delivered, didn't they? Now, in terms of Greek godlike status, you have that when it comes to being intelligent. So much so that there was a survey of women who said, who were asked, which man would you most like to father your child? And guess who came top, Stephen?
Oh, no, serious. Well, maybe they know that I am otherly arranged when it comes to genes, and that therefore there is every chance that I won't be fathering their children, so it's a safe bet.
No, but women are very smart,
but I am
aren't
touched.
they,
I'm
to
very
pick
touched.
You,
oh,
I think.
It's a wonderful thing when people say nice things about me, but of course being British, I squirm with embarrassment and don't know how, because we're most afraid of looking cocky than anything else, and I know that my face in repose can look smug and pleased with itself, and so I'm always desperately trying not to look like that. But all I can say is I'm very honoured if you're one of those people who answered that survey, and I could, I suppose, consider depositing in some one of these banks that exists, but probably not.
But, the pressure of being such a clever clogs.
Well, yes,
it is taxing as well, isn't it? Because there's always that expectation for you to deliver.
There is, yes. For me, it's really just about delight. I like to share the fact that it can seem like show-offy. I'm fully aware. And programs like QI,
You're not a show-off.
I hope not.
That's the beauty, I think.
I really do passionately believe that everybody has a very similar, not always exactly the same, but just as everyone can can run, but not everyone can run as fast as Usain Bolt. There are obviously degrees of, but everybody has a capacity for understanding and for and a curiosity for information and a memory.
Yes.
And I think somewhere along the line it's often discouraged, or that they often by themselves they think, oh, I'm not really I can't remember things, or and they forget that actually they're remembering things all the time, and that the appetite, the curiosity, more people go to art galleries and theatres now than have ever done, a greater proportion, not just greater number of people, because there's this appetite.
Yes.
I think it's fair to say, though I respect teachers enormously in schools, that a lot of people feel let down by their education. They feel that either they were just ill prepared for it, they were encouraged in the wrong way, and that they missed out on things that they now think, I wish I knew more about that.
Yeah.
Whether it's history or geology, when they could, you could be walking in the Lake District and think, what was that stuff about glaciers, and I've forgotten how,
Yes.
and they'll suddenly read, and there comes a time, and it's never too late. Here's a good word to learn: opsimath. It's a nice Greek word. It means someone who learns late in life.
Right.
And I think it's a wonderful thing to learn late in life.
You have a hunger as well, as you say.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. And so as we get to live longer and so on, and as knowledge becomes more available, I think more people will be really keen and excited about discovering things. It doesn't have to be Greek myths or anything close to Greek myths, but just penetrating a world and finding out about stuff is a delight. It's a real pleasure.
Well, you mentioned schools there, sex education, and the awareness of relationships. It's certainly been an issue at some schools in the Midlands. Is there a grown-up way of resolving it?
I think, I mean, it's obviously deeply upsetting.
Yes.
When that awful massacre took place in New Zealand, I couldn't think, there's mosques. I couldn't think what to do. So I remember tweeting. I said, it's impossible to say anything, really. Maybe we should just reach out to our nearest mosque and explain that this is not how most people from the white non-Muslim culture feel. And I thought, well, it's no good me tweeting unless I do it. So I wrote to the Islamic Centre near King's Lynn in Norfolk, where I live, which was the nearest one, and they very sweetly invited me to their Eid celebrations, the evenings, and I went along and we talked about this, and they were wonderful people and kind and considerate, and a little afraid of rising Islamophobia. And they invited my husband. They were very sweet. So this idea that all Islamic people are homophobic or completely opposed to gay marriages or to so on is wrong. I think what happens is the more people shout, that the more people stand back and they get further apart, and then they can't even hear each other.
Yes.
I don't think there is really, what gets amplified is the distortion, not the true signal, and so. The true signal is a very simple matter of just making children aware that this is the world we live in, and just as these are cars and these are trains, and this is a couple with children, and there's mummy and daddy, this is two women who live together and they've adopted a child, and that happens as well, and that's it. There's no kind of diagrams or porn movies being shown. There's no proselytizing, or you must become gay next week or we'll never teach you again.
Yes, exactly.
But unfortunately the tiny malevolent seeds on either side will say, so one side wants to say all the Islamic people are shouting hideous homophobic things, which isn't true, and then some of the people on the other side are saying the schools are trying to ram down our throat these alternative sexual lifestyles of children when it's far too young. And you go, well, no, let's each have a word with ourselves and say, is there really that much disagreement?
Yes.
But it's very hard, and this time at the moment it's particularly hard for people to hear people they don't want to hear. I always say it's like football. You don't believe the referee when he makes a decision against your side, but you never challenge it when he makes a decision against the other side.
Absolutely.
And we're like that throughout culture and politics and religion and social affairs and so on. We kind of don't notice the things that we all agree with. We just take them but the moment we hear something we disagree with, we're furious about it. And, and I think we've
perhaps we ought to listen more.
Yeah, I think so. I do. It's not that there isn't a right and a wrong, and there isn't a decent and there isn't a just and a proper way of looking at things, or a kinder or a better way, but. So I'm not saying just everybody be lovely and hug each other.
But tolerance plays a big part.
Tolerance and understanding and listening, I think. Yeah.
You mentioned digital. We know you're big on social media and also digital. We do have several questions from our viewers, which I'm going to log on quickly and show you, if that's all right.
Oh, yeah.
I need my glasses for this.
You and me both, babe.
Right, let's start with Jane.
Oh, and are there an MP4? They're actually given.
Yes, so you can actually see them. And let's get the volume.
Hi Stephen, my name's Jane and I'm from Wolverhampton and I'm a really big fan of yours. My question is, what do you like to do in your spare time to relax?
Jane, that's a really good question.
Do you relax?
Well, I'm often accused of not being able to, and my husband says, when we go on holiday, the first time I remember I'd sort of compiled this list of art galleries and things to do, and he said, it is actually a holiday. And I said, oh, yeah, I had filled every minute with activities. So I'm not good, Jane, I keep thinking you're there live. Yeah. I'm not particularly good at relaxing, but I tell you a thing that has really transformed my health as much as anything, both mental and physical health, is the audiobook.
Yes.
And the podcast, not necessarily just listening to them, but the fact that they make walking so easy. I used to go.
Is that how you've lost?
That's
so
how I
much
lost weight. Thank you.
Yes,
it is. I mean, I walk.
Because you look fabulous.
I average about 7 miles every morning, a 7-mile walk when I'm at home, and so it's a lovely walk. But if you've got a story, and it can be Agatha Christie or James Bond, or it can be Dostoevsky and F. Scott Fitzgerald. It's not a question of how literary it is. It's just something that you think, oh, I haven't read this, or I haven't read it since I was young, or I've always wanted to read this, and you pop it in, and the best actors in the world, Miriam Margolyes, Ian McKellen, I mean, all these people are doing audiobooks, and so
Harry Potter,
there's a good guy who does Harry Potter, I believe, and so you eat the miles up.
Yes.
That's basically, you're just lost in this fabulous world of storytelling. So that's that, and podcasts too. There's some terrific podcasts on all kinds of subjects that can be interesting.
So you're keeping the mind.
Keeps the mind going.
But
and I find
relaxing.
It's obviously good for the body, and also I just find it's good for the mood.
Yes.
I don't know why, and I'm not suggesting it's a cure for mood disorders and bipolar and various things like that. But as someone who does suffer from that, I have found that
it lifts.
It does. It does lift the mood. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you, Jane, for that one. Let's get another one. Let's try Ruth. Now we like Ruth because she's done a very nice going out in the garden.
Yes, look at that.
She's framed it beautifully.
Framed, yes.
Here we go.
Hello, Stephen Fry. My question is, would you consider becoming Britain's next Prime Minister? Thank you.
Just a small
Ruth,
request.
I'm very touched by the idea that you think I'm capable of being Prime Minister. On the other hand, I'm pretty astonished by those who have been Prime Minister who haven't seemed to be capable. Listen, I'm many things, but above all, I'm a moral coward and a social coward, and I don't think I could take the hatred and the dislike of those who disagree with what I said. I mean, it's bad enough on Twitter. You post something, and I tend not to read.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't really post much political things. There have been a few things over the last few years where I've had quite strong feelings that, at least trying to myth bust, as they say, trying to sort of clear up what I think are misunderstandings about certain aspects of politics, but I'm aware that it annoys people who disagree with me, and some people, most people are so wonderful, and most people, if they disagree with you, are wonderful, and they're not awful people.
Yeah.
But I always think it's a bit like a swimming pool. If 99% of the swimming pool water is beautiful, then that's nice. But if there's one little piece of poo floating in it, I'm not going to swim in the 'Are you?
No, it's
even
I've
though,
got a
and it's the
image
same.
in my
It's
head,
the same with
but
Twitter, and it's the same with people.
Absolutely.
99% of people, at least, even if they disagree with, they're very nice and they're understanding. They're not vicious, but it's that
1%.
It's that 1% that are really unpleasant and unkind and threatening, and and I just would. one of my abiding faults is a desire to please. It has its good side, but it's also, it's a bit pathetic, really. I know so many impressive people, artists, musicians, whatever, who sort of don't care what people think of them.
Yeah, but you're probably your own worst critic, aren't you?
I really am, yeah. Although someone out there is going, not while I'm alive.
No, I hear what you're saying. Let's do one final question.
Nice question, Ruth, thank you.
Yeah, no, it's a good one. And let's try Tom. So, here we go. There we go. There's Tom. We've got a nice view of his house.
Yes.
Hi, Stephen. I'm Tom Moyer, currently living in New Zealand, although originally from Scotland. I wanted to ask you a simple question. What's the difference between British humour and American humour? And do Americans understand satire?
Thanks very much. It was an interesting question all the way down in New Zealand. I've often thought that with American humour, it's certainly, if you talk the average sitcom in America, it's based on jokes. I mean, real jokes. And there are exceptions. Terrific one-liners, just moving, fast-talking one-liners. And the greatest British sitcoms, I think, are based on character, and absolutely on character.
Yes.
And usually a failure of a character is the most important part. The great sort of, the Mount Rushmore, the British Mount Rushmore of comic heroes are all rather similar. They're all trying to be grand in a world that is letting them down, whether it's Captain Mannering in Dad's Army, who's kind of, trying to be, and all right, Wilson, and everything's going wrong. Whether that's true of Harold Steptoe, you're too young to remember, but
no, I do remember.
It's true of Tony Hancock, it's true of Leonard Rossiter in Rising Damp, it's true of Basil Fawlty with his ties and his blazers, it's true of Alan Partridge, it's true of David Brent. They're all failures, they're all hopeless, they all think they're great, but we see that they just don't get the modern world, and they can't properly react with them. That they're a failure. Now, an American would never have a failure as a comic hero.
Well,
the American hero is
success.
faster, sharper, cleverer.
Yeah.
I remember seeing a huge, successful comic film when I was a teenager, late teenager, I guess early 20s, Animal House. You remember Animal House? And there's a scene where there's a toga party, a famous toga party, and there's a John Belushi in his toga goes up the steps, and there's a folk singer who's playing on a guitar, and John Belushi just grabs the guitar and smashes it and kind of waggles his eyebrows at the audience, and everybody laughs. And I remember thinking, yes, an American comedian would want to play John Belushi. A British comedian would want to play the folk singer.
Yes.
The pathetic.
Yes.
Oh, and there are all kinds of social reasons for that, but we laugh at ourselves.
Yeah.
Americans, I think, and I wouldn't overstate this, are not that good at laughing at themselves.
Yeah. There's not that much self-deprecation.
No. I remember Jonathan Lynn, who's a great comic hero of mine. He was one of the co-writers of Yes Minister and Yes Prime Minister, and directed the wonderful My Cousin Vinny, which is one of the great comedy films, I think. And he said, when I was first going to America regularly, he said, don't make the mistake at a dinner party of having a sort of real kind of typical English discussion where you go, no, that's rubbish. But the truth is this, because an American will go, did you just say what I said was rubbish? Excuse me? And they'll be very offended.
Yes.
But we're used to sort of, like they don't have Parliament. I do think, for all that we say Parliament, all that shouting and disagreeing, it's very humbling. A Prime Minister has to go and stand and answer questions. Can you imagine Trump having to do that?
Yes.
Actually answer questions from other elected representatives, on his feet.
Yeah.
What is this $1 trillion deficit, and how is it going to be sorted out, and how is this fiscally responsible, Mr. President? And then the Speaker says, answer.
Yeah.
Whoa! So, there's a lot wrong with our country, and our democracy is not in the happiest state it's been in my lifetime, but I think this ability to laugh at ourselves is a very important one.
Well, it's been an absolute pleasure to talk to you. We could talk to you all day.
Oh,
Sadly, we're on a time limit.
Pleasure for me too,
Really
Sam.
nice.
Thank you.
Stephen, thank you very much. I wish you all the best with the show.
Thanks. Come and see it.
I will.